The email didn't ask. It ordered. $50,000 or I was no longer their daughter. The subject line was as bland as the demand was brutal. Outstanding balance. Action required. The sender? My father. Not his assistant. Not his lawyer. Him. My name glowed at the top, and just beneath it, in a quiet, calculated slap, CC Derek Reeves. I didn't open it right away. My eyes scanned the header, rereading the names like I hadn't seen them in months. I had. Derek had texted me last week to not make things awkward at Dad's birthday party. I'd ignored it. Elaine had left a voicemail the week before that, asking if I could act like a proper daughter for once. I deleted it without listening to the rest. But this was a move. I clicked. Natalie, you've made your stance clear, but that doesn't absolve your debt. We supported your college education at significant cost. You benefited, and it's time to give back. We request a full reimbursement of $50,000. We expect a bank transfer within 30 days. Consider this our final ask. We won't let this disgrace go unanswered. Robert and Elaine Reeves. Below the signature was the quietest dagger of all. Derek had read the message. My hands stayed still on the trackpad. I could hear the rain hitting my fire escape in soft, spattering bursts. Outside, Hoboken slept. Inside, my apartment felt like a bunker. Safe, small, barely mine. The dim glow of the laptop was the only light carving shadows across the takeout containers on my table and the unopened stack of utilities in the corner. The laptop fan whirred. A low hum, like something waking up. Like me. I'd always known they'd come back around. I just didn't know when, or how low. You benefited, the email said. As if survival had been a gift. As if every sleepless night studying while Derek partied, every rejected grant I replaced with hours at the bookstore, every silent semester where I didn't call because I couldn't afford to, somehow meant nothing. Because they paid tuition after coercing me to sign the forms I never understood. I shut the laptop. The rain continued like the tap of fingernails against glass. I remembered being 19, sitting at the kitchen counter, a packet of paper in front of me. My mother's tone warm. Too warm. Just your signature, sweetheart. For your student file. I was tired, home from shift, hadn't eaten. You want your future, right? I didn't remember the fine print. I remembered her hand guiding mine. Our help is priceless, she'd said once, years earlier, when I'd hesitated to accept a car ride back to campus. But don't ever forget who gave it to you. It wasn't help. It was collateral. I stood slowly and crossed to the corner of the room. My old cabinet drawer hadn't been opened in a while. It stuck for a moment before giving way with a crack. Inside was the old leather folder I hadn't touched since the day I moved out of that house. I pulled it free. The loan agreement was in there, yellowed with age, creased, faintly ink-smudged. My name, printed on line 3. My signature, not in my hand. On line 5. Not my handwriting. I remembered my own neat block letters back then. What I saw was tight cursive, rushed, someone trying to mimic compliance. I sat back down, the folder in my lap. The room felt colder. This wasn't about college. It never was. It was about obedience, about punishing me for declining the invitation to a party I was supposed to perform at, for not playing the big sister role next to Derek while they announced his run for local office, for not showing up to clap at Robert's 60th like I hadn't been quietly erased from the family photos on the sideboard. This was their weapon. Paper, guilt, money, and they wanted to pull me back in with it. My phone buzzed once. A follow-up from Derek, probably. I didn't check. I didn't need to. I placed the folder on the table beside me, opened the laptop again, and began drafting a reply. But not to them. Not yet. I opened another tab, typed in Clara Donnelly's firm. She'd gone into private legal work 3 years ago. Corporate litigation. No nonsense. No allegiances. She owed me nothing. That was the point. If they wanted a transaction, fine. But I had some terms too. The debt was real, but the debtor wasn't me. The words came to me while I stared at the open file under Clara's desk lamp, the very sentence I hadn't allowed myself to believe for over a decade. Now it sat in my chest like a steady drumbeat, breaking apart the silence that used to hold it hostage. Clara's apartment was organized to the inch. Her dining table had become a legal battlefield, every inch covered in manila folders, post-it tabs, and double-spaced printouts of contracts, signatures, and timestamps. She hadn't changed much since college. Same unflinching tone, same sharp ponytail. But the high heels and sarcasm had been replaced by reading glasses and razor-precise statements. "Let me guess," she said, tapping the corner of the contract with her pen. "They made you sign this the day after you got that bursary rejection?" I nodded. 18 hours after, to be exact, I replied. Her brow lifted, unamused. They knew. They always did. The document in front of us was a copy of the agreement they'd forced on me when I was 19. Supposedly a family co-pay for my tuition. But Clara's eyes had locked on something I'd missed. "This clause here," she pointed, "requires co-signature verification. And the signer is... Wait, Elaine Reeves?" She looked up at me. "That's your mother, not your legal guardian at the time." I was already an adult, I murmured. "Barely." "Still," she tapped again. "You weren't given full disclosure, and there's a coercion red flag all over this. We can argue the contract was invalid from inception." The rain had followed me from Hoboken, soft against her windows. I leaned back, letting the silence settle around us. But in my stomach, something turned over. Not fear, not yet triumph, but momentum. I was no longer reacting. I was moving. Clara pushed her glasses up and narrowed her eyes. "You said this was triggered by a new email?" I slid my phone across the table. She scrolled slowly. Her lips parted when she reached the line. "We won't let this disgrace go unanswered." "Wow," she muttered. "I forgot how theatrical your parents could be." "They were always rehearsing," I said. "Only now they're doing it in writing." Just then, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen on my screen in years. Ethan. Clara looked up. "Is that—" I nodded. "He said he found something." We met at a coffee shop across from the ferry terminal. The place hadn't changed. Same chipped mugs, same over-friendly barista who hummed Taylor Swift under her breath. I slid into the booth, unsure how much of me Ethan still recognized. He looked older, but not tired. The kind of older that came with learning to speak quieter when the truth was louder. "I didn't expect you to actually text back," he said, offering a small smile. "I didn't expect you to keep that voicemail," I replied. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a slim flash drive. "I was working on a council promo video for the neighborhood office back in 2021. Your mom left me a voice note by mistake." I hesitated. "And you kept it?" He shrugged. "I thought I might need it. Turns out you do." He slid the drive across the table. I plugged it into my phone with shaking hands. Clara had warned me not to expect gold, but what I heard was molten. Elaine's voice clear and confident. "Natalie would do anything for Derek. That's why we used her name. She doesn't ask questions, she signs. That's what loyalty looks like." I pressed pause. Ethan watched me. "You okay?" I nodded once. "You just gave me my matchstick." We left the cafe quietly. I sent the clip to Clara before I crossed the street. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Her reply, "This changes things. We can file on 3 counts, maybe 4. But my fingers hovered over the screen. I didn't want a court. I wanted a crowd. When Clara called that night, her voice was unusually tentative. "You're sure you want to do it this way?" "I don't want court," I said, my voice steady. "I want audience." There was a pause. Then her voice lowered. "Then you'll need a stage and a trigger." I smiled into the dark, already hearing the clink of glasses, the smug laughter, the velvet invitations with Derek's initials embossed in gold. They already planned both. They built the perfect event. I just added the final act. String lights traced every angle of the Reeves mansion like an apology too elegant to be sincere. Classical music floated down from hidden speakers. Champagne flutes caught the light like diamonds. The staff wore black and white, the guests gold and navy. It looked like the inside of a political campaign ad, all polished promises and no shadows. I stepped onto the marble patio and felt 30 sets of eyes pretend not to look at me. They hadn't expected me to come. My mother turned first, her expression tight under soft foundation and camera-ready lipstick. She gave me a smile so rehearsed it barely moved her face. "Natalie," she breathed, stepping forward like I was an old friend from boarding school. "You made it." I looked past her. "Where's Dad?" "Inside. Toasts in 30. Her hand gripped my elbow like a warning. "We'd appreciate if you could just support Derek tonight. This is a family moment." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. As I moved through the crowd, people parted with polite tension. Most of them didn't know the email existed. Some of them did, and avoided my eyes. I greeted a few former neighbors, nodded at a man from the council's advisory board, and murmured the same line to each of them, just under the sound of string quartet arrangements. "Stay until after the toast." By the time I reached the far side of the hall, Ethan was already there, a glass in one hand and his phone in the other. His tux fit better than I remembered. His smile hadn't changed. "The mic's clipped to the podium," he whispered. "Camera's on. Wide shot. Livestream's quiet for now. We're at 86 views. Where's Clara?" 2 blocks away. If they get nasty, she's in the front seat with her laptop. Pre-filed a temporary injunction for defamation. Ready to hit send. "Perfect," I said. He touched my shoulder. Just once. Just gently. "You good?" I didn't respond. Because I remembered another party. My 18th birthday. Same house. Same chandelier. Different music. That night, my father stood on the steps and toasted Derek's junior golf scholarship while I held my full-ride university offer in my hand. He hadn't mentioned it. Not once. "Some families build each other," he'd said that night, raising a glass. "And some are just lucky enough to have a son like Derek." Tonight, the speeches started 10 minutes early. Robert Reeves stood beneath a custom gold banner that read, "60 and strong." Beside him, Elaine looked like a senator's wife. Derek hovered near the steps, waiting for his moment. It came with his father's last line. "And now, to announce a future our neighborhood deserves." The applause didn't last long, because I stepped forward. "Sorry," I said, taking the mic from its stand. "Before Derek makes history, I'd like to add something." Silence. Not full silence. The kind with breaths and tightened muscles and half-finished sips. Behind me, the projection screen flickered. Ethan nodded from the back. I clicked the remote. The screen showed a contract. Familiar to me. Foreign to most. Lines highlighted in yellow. At the top, Natalie Reeves. Below, loan agreement, tuition support, 2009. At the bottom, beneficiary, Derek Reeves. Gasps broke like cracks in ice. "My parents called it family duty," I said, steady. The next slide came up. A snippet of the email from Robert and Elaine, demanding repayment CC'd to Derek. It lit the screen like a confession. "The law calls it coercion," I continued. Pause. "I call it betrayal." No one clapped, no one moved. I scanned the crowd and saw what I came for. Not outrage, not disbelief. Recognition. The kind that turns supporters into witnesses. From the second row, a young reporter raised her hand, notepad half lifted. "Is this true, Mr. Reeves?" I didn't wait for him to answer. I turned to my parents. "Say it. Or I will." They had 5 minutes to come clean. I didn't say what would happen if they didn't. The door clicked shut behind us, drowning out the music and laughter from the main hall. Inside, the air was heavier. Dim wall sconces glowed against muted wallpaper. casting our shadows across the carpet like ghosts at a wake. A drinks table sat untouched in the corner. No windows, no witnesses. Elaine closed the door with the slow grace of someone preparing a kill. Robert didn't speak. He paced. I stood still. Elaine began first. She always did. We didn't want this, Natalie. Not here. Not now. Then maybe you should have thought about that before sending the email, I replied. Robert turned to me. You ambushed us. You humiliated your brother. I raised my eyebrows. I showed a contract. I quoted your words. You did the rest. He stepped forward, his face pinched. You're ruining the entire family's reputation over one bad judgment. Bad judgment? I said quietly. That's what you're calling it now? Elaine cut in, sharp. Save face for your parents. Don't be stupid. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her shift in her heels. You forged my signature, I said. You used me. Elaine's lip twitched. We raised you. We put you through school. With my name on debt. With no consent. With a fake signature. It wasn't fake, Robert snapped. It was an act of trust. Then prove it, I said. Let's have a handwriting expert take a look. Elaine's jaw tightened. I'm not here to debate, I said. I'm here to give you 5 minutes. Robert blinked. 5 minutes for what? To walk back out there and say it yourselves. Tell the guests, tell the press. Or I release the full audio. The email, the contract. The signatures, Elaine laughed. The brittle kind, more panic than amusement. You wouldn't dare. I pulled out my phone. The play button lit up like a match in the dark. I hit it. Elaine's voice, unmistakable and crisp. Natalie would do anything for Derek. That's why we used her name. She doesn't ask questions. She signs. That's what loyalty looks like. Robert's eyes widened. Elaine staggered back half a step, her fingers clawing at her pearls. Still think I'm bluffing? I asked. At that exact moment, the door swung open. Derek burst in, breath sharp, hair disheveled. What the hell is going on? His voice cracked. He looked at me like I'd shattered the world he lived in. You couldn't let me have this, could you? You always had to make everything about you. I didn't respond. He wasn't the point. He never was. Elaine stepped toward me, hand raised like she could still parent her way out of this. You'll destroy him. You'll destroy us. I didn't destroy anything, I said. You handed me the match. I just stopped pretending not to see the gasoline. Derek turned to Robert. Say something. You're just gonna let her do this? Robert was pale now. His mouth opened, then closed. I turned to the door, opened it a crack. Ethan stood in the hallway, back to the wall, phone in hand. He gave me the smallest nod. I glanced back at my parents. You've got 5 minutes to go out there and say it yourselves, I said, or I will make sure every voter hears it first. Elaine's voice shook now, but not with fear, with fury. If you do this, don't ever call our family again. I didn't blink. That's not a threat. That's a relief. They wanted me silenced. Instead, I gave them a microphone. The lights were too bright. Stage lights always were. They didn't warm a room. They exposed it. Every shadow erased, every flaw etched into sharp relief. I watched from the wings of the main hall as Elaine stepped up to the podium, her smile polished and brittle, the kind that cut both ways. She raised her hands gently as if soothing a congregation. There's been some confusion tonight, she began, her voice smooth with performative warmth. But I want to remind everyone that family is complicated, that sometimes love looks messy, and that at the heart of all this, we're simply trying to move forward. Together. She had nothing. No denial. No facts. Just fog. The kind of speech built to smother oxygen and buy time. The guests murmured. Whispers scratched at the walls like moths. In the third row, a woman from the council crossed her arms. A young journalist near the aisle leaned forward, her phone half raised. Elaine gestured toward the crowd, voice trembling on cue. "We hope that this moment doesn't define us, but refines us." I stepped into the light. Her voice stopped mid-sentence. I walked across the stage without apology. Ethan gave the signal from the back corner. The livestream count ticked past 11,000. "I think," I said calmly, "the room deserves more than fog." Elaine took a step back. Robert remained seated near the front, face expressionless. Derek stood stiff beside him, jaw clenched, sweat beading at his hairline. Behind me, the screen came to life. Slide 1. The contract. A loan agreement, my name in bold, my signature, and beneath it the clause in red. Beneficiary, Derek Reeves. Slide 2. The email. The same email they'd sent me weeks ago, demanding repayment. "We expect a full reimbursement of $50,000. CC Derek Reeves." Slide 3. The audio clip. Elaine's voice, clear and damning. "Natalie would do anything for Derek. That's why we used her name. She doesn't ask questions. She signs." The silence cracked. From the corner, one of the reporters whispered into her phone. A man in a blazer turned to his colleague and mouthed, "That's real?" A second later, a journalist near the livestream camera confirmed aloud, "This is now public record." I turned toward the councilwoman, then toward the guests who'd once clinked glasses with my parents, who had probably written checks for Derek's campaign. "I didn't forge the signature," I said, "but I carried the debt, and I was told that was love." The room tensed again, not in disbelief, but in recognition. Elaine's mouth opened, then closed. Then Clara appeared from the back of the room, heels silent against the carpet. She carried a leather folder and moved with the kind of confidence only truth grants. "I'm Clara Donnelly," she said, calm but cutting. "Ms. Reeves's legal counsel." She pulled a sheet from the folder and held it toward the front row. "We have verified handwriting analyses confirming the signature was not hers. At the time of signing, she was 19, had no legal counsel, and was misled about the nature of the documents. This was not family duty. It was financial coercion." A gasp swept the room. Someone stood. It was Councilman Harris, old, stooped, but still sharp when he spoke. "Mr. Reeves," he said clearly, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "based on what we've seen tonight, your candidacy is no longer viable." Derek's face drained of color. Elaine's hands flew to her mouth as she collapsed into tears. Robert gripped the arms of his chair like he could hold the narrative together with sheer force of will. I stepped down from the stage. They gave me nothing. I just took back what was mine. They thought I could be bought back with guilt, but I don't owe them anything, not even my silence. The sun angled low through my apartment window, casting long, amber streaks across the hardwood floor. Outside, late summer drifted by in soft waves. Quieter now. Cooler, like the world was finally exhaling. On the TV across the room, the anchor's voice was calm, detached. Tonight's top story, the Reeves financial scandal. Public fallout continues after leaked documents and audio-confirmed allegations of fraudulent debt assignments within the Reeves family. I muted it. I didn't need to hear their names anymore to know they'd lost the one thing they'd prized more than control: credibility. A soft ding broke the stillness. My inbox glowed with a new message. The subject line plain: "Thank you." I clicked it open. "Hi, Natalie. I'm 19. My dad tried to take out a credit card in my name last week. I saw your story online. It helped me say no for the first time in my life. I thought maybe you should know. NJ." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I stood, grabbed my coat, and stepped out into the light. The community center wasn't grand. No marble columns, no polished podiums. But it felt like something solid, something chosen. Inside, the first brake line panel had already begun. Clara stood at the front, sharp in a navy blazer, answering a question about legal protections for students forced into debt by relatives. Ethan managed the soundboard at the back, nodding quietly to himself as the microphones passed hands. I took my seat near the front just in time to catch a young woman speaking. She looked no older than 23, her fingers twisting the hem of her sleeve. "I thought I was the only one," she said, voice tight. "I thought I was crazy. Thank you for proving I'm not." The room went still, then quiet applause. Not loud, not performative. Just enough to mean, "We heard you. You're not alone." Later, while we packed up flyers and folded chairs, Ethan leaned against the wall beside me. "If they apologize," he asked, "would you forgive them?" I looked at him. "That would require them to change," I said simply, "and I'm not waiting for that anymore." He nodded. No pushback, no advice, just understanding. Back home, I lit a candle and pulled out the old leather notebook I hadn't touched since college, the one where I used to write everything I couldn't say aloud. I flipped to a fresh page, and slowly I wrote the first line of the memoir I never thought I'd start. I didn't return the money. I reclaimed the truth. The notebook stayed open for hours. I had written only one line. I didn't return the money. I reclaimed the truth. But it felt like enough. For once, I wasn't writing to convince, to defend, or to document. I was writing because the silence had space in it now. No more pressing weight. Just air. My phone buzzed. Not a call. Not a threat. Just a notification from the Breakline forum. Someone had posted a photo from the event. A low-resolution shot of Clara, mid-sentence, hand in the air. In the comments, a dozen messages had already stacked up. Wish I'd had this 10 years ago. I thought my parents were the only ones who did that to me. I didn't know what to call it until now. Coercion. No applause, no likes, just witness. There's a kind of relief that doesn't look like joy. It's quiet. It sits next to you while you wash dishes or fold laundry. It walks beside you to the grocery store and doesn't ask for conversation. That's what my days had become. Until the knock on my door. 3 soft raps. Precise. Timed. I opened it to find a small envelope on the floor. No one in the hall. No footsteps fading down the stairs. I bent down. Inside? No note. Just a photograph. A family photo. The one from my graduation party, before the edits. Before Elaine had it cropped and reframed. Before Derek's campaign team turned it into a press visual. The original. Me, in cap and gown, standing just slightly apart from the rest. My smile small but real. I hadn't seen this photo in over a decade. On the back, written in pen, unmistakably Robert's handwriting. We were wrong. But we don't know how to be right. I sat on the floor and stared at it. I should have felt vindicated. I should have cried. I didn't. Instead, I flipped it over, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into the back of the notebook. Not out of sentiment, but record. I was done letting other people erase my past. That weekend, Clara and I sat at a coffee shop in downtown Newark. We were supposed to be finalizing the next Breakline event, a collaboration with a group helping foster teens who'd been victims of identity theft by relatives. But instead, we sipped burnt espresso and talked about the stories that didn't make headlines. "I keep thinking about that girl," Clara said. "The one who said she thought she was crazy." "Yeah," I nodded. "Me too." Clara leaned back. "We've tapped into something bigger than I thought. It's not just about money. It's about being told your reality doesn't matter. It's about being told your no isn't valid," I added. She smiled. "You going to write that down?" "I already did," I said, gesturing toward my bag. Chapter 2. Her smile widened, then faded into something more thoughtful. "Have they reached out? Your family?" I didn't answer right away. "I got a picture," I said finally. No return address, no apology, just a picture and a sentence. "What did it say?" I repeated it. Clara didn't comment. She just sipped her coffee and let the weight of that sentence pass between us. In her silence, I found space again. Later that evening, Ethan called. He'd been following up with one of the local news outlets that wanted to do a feature on Breakline. They offered a short documentary segment, interviews, a timeline of the Reeves scandal, footage from the night of the party. They want to paint it as the downfall of a dynasty, he said. It wasn't a dynasty, I said. It was a facade. He paused. You want me to decline? No, I said. I want them to tell the truth. But not just mine. Others too. The real story is that this isn't rare. It's repeated. Quietly. In thousands of homes. You sure you're ready for all that? I thought about it. The answer came easier than I expected. Yeah, I said. Because for the first time, I'm not afraid they'll tell the story wrong. I've already told it. That weekend, I joined Clara and a few volunteers at our new shared office, a small room with mismatched chairs, peeling paint, and the faint smell of copier toner. On one wall, we'd started a mural. Not with paint, but pinned letters. Messages from people we'd helped, even just by listening. Some were long, some were single lines. I left last night. I showed my partner the loan. Thank you, just thank you. I added one of my own that day. It read, I'm not sorry for leaving. I'm only sorry I waited so long. We pinned it to the center, and then we got to work. That night, as I sat in bed, notebook on my lap, I opened a new page. Not a chapter, not a thesis, just a sentence I'd been holding on to, quietly, since the beginning. I don't forgive them for what they did, but I forgive myself for surviving it. I closed the notebook. Outside, the city moved quietly, not roaring, not rushing, just breathing, like me. A week later, a letter arrived, this time with a return address. It was from Elaine. The handwriting on the envelope was rushed, uneven. Not the elegant script she used for Christmas cards or formal invitations. It looked human. I stared at it for a long time before sliding my finger under the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no apology, just a plea. If you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here. We made mistakes. You made them louder, but maybe that was needed. Mom. No signature. No love, Mom. Just Mom, a title she assumed still belonged to her. I placed the letter on my kitchen counter, next to the faded photograph Robert had sent. Then I opened a fresh page in my notebook. Survivors don't need closure from the people who broke them. Sometimes peace is the door you lock behind you. I didn't respond to the letter, not out of cruelty, and not out of pride. But because some silences aren't punishments, they're boundaries. And for the first time, I was living inside one that felt like mine. The next morning, I met Ethan and Clara at the new office for Breakline. We'd finally gotten the keys to the upstairs unit, a space twice as big, with better light and enough room for group sessions. On the wall, we painted 3 words in bold block letters: truth, boundaries, reclaim. As we finished the first coat, Ethan handed me a brush. Want to do the period at the end? I dipped it in paint and made a single, sharp dot. There, I said. Now it's a sentence. He looked at me, smiling. Feels like one. It is one, I replied. Mine. In the weeks that followed, the media quieted. The headlines faded, replaced by newer scandals, newer names. But our work didn't stop. If anything, it grew. We launched online workshops. Clara started training volunteers. Ethan ran webinars on digital safety and coercion. And I started writing again. Not for defense, not for anger, just for clarity. And when people asked me, in emails, in person, even in interviews, do you miss them? I gave the same answer every time. No, I said, because I finally know who I am without them. And that was more than enough. They used guilt like a currency, believing silence could be bought. But this time, their victim brought the receipts. Natalie didn't just expose a lie. She shattered a legacy built on coercion, proving that truth, when spoken aloud, is louder than any inheritance. Like a slow-turning verdict, justice came late, but it came with weight. Perhaps the hardest victories are the ones where you walk away not with applause, but with your name intact. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell us what you think in the comments below.